Hey guys, and welcome back to Z3 Cubing. Today I'm going to show you my top 5 most difficult algorithms. So today I'm going to be walking you through 5 cubes that each involve some particularly difficult algorithms. So on a Rubik's Cube type puzzle, basically what an algorithm is a sequence of moves that you'll normally memorize, and that will accomplish a certain goal on the cube. So for a particular step, you might have 3 or 4 different algorithms, and you do one of them based on what case you have. Then after doing the correct algorithm in the correct way, that step will then be solved, and you can go ahead and move on. Now a lot of algorithms tend to be pretty simple, only like 5 or 10 moves on a cube, and they tend to be pretty ergonomic, so once you do them a couple times, they'll kind of get in muscle memory, and you won't forget them anymore. But some algorithms can also be incredibly difficult, like 10, 20 moves or more. And these are the ones that I want to highlight in this video, the longest, most frustrating, most difficult to memorize algorithms on any cubes that you can imagine. Now for the first puzzle up on this list, we're going to be talking about the standard 3x3 Rubik's Cube. Now 3x3 algorithms tend to not be that difficult, especially compared to some of the other cubes on this list. And that's because it's actually a pretty simple puzzle compared to like a 4x4, 5x5, or cubes bigger than this one. In fact, you may know that you can solve any position on this cube in 20 moves or less. And so that means you can find an algorithm for any single case that's less than 20 moves. If you come across an algorithm that's more than 20 moves, you know it's not move optimal. However, in some cases, algorithms are over 20 moves because it makes it a little bit easier to execute. And that is the case for this first algorithm I'm going to be talking about. You may have recognized this already. This is the NPerm. Now this is one of many PLL algorithms, or permutation of the last layer, which basically means moving all the last layer pieces into the right spot. Now this particular PLL is one of the most hated cases on the entire 3x3, and one of the standard algorithms for this one in particular, which is called the NA permutation, goes like this. R, U, R prime, U, R, U, R prime, F prime, R, U, R prime, U prime, R prime, F, R2, U prime, R prime, U2, R, U prime, R prime. I believe that was a full 21 moves, which of course means it is not the most move optimal way to do this case, but it is definitely one of the most popular algorithms because in the middle of that algorithm is another popular algorithm, the JPerm. It's basically that with a couple moves at the beginning and the end, but it's just such a long algorithm that I really hate it. I don't use that one in particular, I use one that goes like this, but it's just a really ugly algorithm. Like you do like D moves and you have to rotate the cube before and after. It's just a really weird algorithm. Now there's also the NB permutation, which is kind of the mirror of that last case, and this one is even more universally hated because there's no nice algorithm to do it, not even a long one. So you either have to do the weird U and D rotatey thing, or there's this really long one that has R and L moves, so it's really hard to execute. I just do a weird one that has like F moves. It goes kind of like this, but you kind of have to regrip the cube in the middle. Really, there's just no nice way to do it. Now we could also sit here for a while and talk about a bunch of other hated 3x3 algorithms. For example, the GPerm. There's actually 4 of them. You have to memorize exactly how to recognize each of them, as well as the long algorithms themselves. They look kind of like this. They're just really awkward. They have these weird wide moves, and like, just look at how awkward this hand movement is. It is kind of fun though. Anyway, let's move on to the next cube, and this one is one step up from the 3x3. It is the 4x4. So you may know that the way most people solve a 4x4 is by reducing it down into a 3x3. So basically you solve each of these blocks of 4 centerpieces in the middle of every side, and then you put together all these edges into blocks just like this, and then what you have is a bunch of centers, edges, and corners, just like a 3x3, and you can solve it by just turning the outer layers. Except you may run into 1 or 2 problems, because you can have cases like this, where an edge pair is kind of just flipped around like this, which would not normally be possible on a 3x3. And of course the reason that it is possible is because this isn't one edge, this is actually 2 edges paired together, and so obviously you could break them apart and kind of move them around in ways that wouldn't normally be possible on a 3x3. So the way that you solve this is actually the algorithm that I learned a long time ago. It's definitely not the best algorithm nowadays, but this is what I learned how to do. You do R2, B2, U2, L, U2, R prime, U2, R, U2, F2, R, F2, L prime, B2, R2. And now basically what that algorithm did is it solved that problem I was talking about with 3x3 stage on this cube with getting cases that weren't possible, and those cases are called parity. Now there's actually 2 different parity cases. That was just the algorithm for one of those cases. The other algorithm is like this. It's actually a lot simpler. It's not very many moves, and it swaps around 2 edges like this, which also wouldn't normally be possible on a 3x3. But that one that I showed you earlier is definitely the most difficult algorithm on the 4x4. Now since then I have actually learned a little bit of a better algorithm for doing that case. So this is the algorithm you would use if you wanted to swap around a single edge piece during a speed solve. It's actually very similar in length to the other algorithm that I showed. It's just a little bit easier to execute, a little bit faster. However, the point is, no matter which algorithm you use, it's going to be a very long algorithm and a very difficult algorithm to memorize. Anyway, the next cube up on this list is actually very similar to this cube. However, it looks quite a bit different on first glance. Now this puzzle is called a Megamorphix, and before you get too freaked out about it, it is literally the exact same thing as a 4x4. As you can see here, we can turn the top layer on both of them. This one has these 4 centerpieces in the middle. This one also has 4 centerpieces in the middle. You also have all the corresponding edges. So these pieces are edges, just like the edges on this cube. And these pieces are corners. You have these 4 corners around the one face, just like you have the 4 corners on this cube. So they're actually the exact same cube. They still have 6 sides. It's the exact same thing. So you should remember this as the other parity case that's not normally possible on a 3x3, where you just have these 2 edge pieces swapped around. And normally what you can do on a 4x4 is just a simple algorithm like this, and then the cube is solved. But the problem comes up if we try and do that algorithm on this cube. So let's go ahead and execute it real quick, and we'll go ahead and see what happens. So just a couple more moves here, like this. And as you can see, these pieces were successfully swapped around, but we also swapped around some extra pieces in these centers here. And if you think about it, this is one solid center on a 4x4. So normally if you were to swap around these 2 center pieces, it wouldn't do anything because they're both green on the 4x4. But in this case, since they're not the same color, swapping around these 2 center pieces kind of messes everything up. So that's why you have a problem doing that algorithm on this cube. Basically, the normal algorithm on the 4x4 swaps around pieces that normally don't matter if they're swapped around, but on this cube it does matter that they're swapped around. So there are actually some alternate algorithms that don't swap around those pieces, but they're even longer and harder. So this is one of the simplest ones that I found, but it still is pretty long. So you have to do R2, U2, R, U2, R2, U2, R2, U2, R, U2, R2, U2. So obviously remembering all those different R's and U's and exactly which way they have to go and exactly making sure that you're turning them the exact number of times on this cube on this inner layer, which is very hard to control because it's not the normal shape of a normal 4x4 and all that kind of stuff, all that together along with just memorizing the algorithm at all just makes this algorithm very difficult for this particular cube. Anyway, moving on. We actually have another 4x4 variation here, but this time instead of talking about solving the 4x4 normally, we're going to talk about solving it blindfolded. So basically how you solve it blindfolded, after memorizing all the pieces and putting on your blindfold, you solve the pieces one piece at a time. So basically you solve all the corner pieces, then you solve all the edge pieces, and you solve all the center pieces. So in particular, I'm going to be talking about solving the center pieces today. And so basically what you do is you do it one center piece at a time. And basically you look at one particular centerpiece, like say this one right here, and you say you want to move this centerpiece over to here because that would solve it. And then you want to move this centerpiece over to here. And then you want to move this centerpiece over to here. So you kind of memorize that cycle in your head. And then what you do to execute it is you take this centerpiece, and what you do is you move it up into a particular spot on the cube, which is called the buffer. So the buffer piece is right here. So you have to move this piece up to here without affecting the cube too much. So you do a couple moves like this, and now the piece is in the buffer. And what you can do is a U2 move, and then you can undo those setup moves. And now this piece is like this. And what you do is you go to the next piece in your memorization, which is the one right here. And then you do the same thing. You move this piece to the buffer. You do U2, and then you undo those setup moves. And now the green piece that used to be over here is now over here in its solved position. And now you have to do the same piece with the next piece in the cycle. So this one right here. So you do a couple moves to get it up into the buffer. You do U2, and then you undo. Now that red piece is solved. And now finally, with this blue piece that needs to get back over to here, you do a couple of setup moves like this. You do U2, and then you undo them like this. And now, as you can see, all those pieces that were just unsolved are now solved. Now, you may not have understood all of that because it is kind of complicated, and I'm really just trying to explain it as fast as possible. But the really difficult part with the complicated algorithms comes along when you're trying to get that piece, like say over here, up into the buffer piece right here. So, for example, you would do some slice moves like this to get it up to there. But the problem comes when you're trying to get a piece like, say, this one right here that's already in the top layer over to here without messing up any of the rest of the cube. So you might think that you could just do this, but now you've messed up all these other top layer pieces, which you'll need to have in the same spot. So try and get this piece over to here without messing anything up. It's kind of difficult. So you have to learn some complicated algorithms, like for example, if you want to get this piece to here, what you have to do is this. And there we go. Or say if you wanted to move a piece from the bottom layer up to the buffer, you'd have to do an algorithm like this. And this one is equally long and complicated, equally hard to remember. But the really difficult thing about these algorithms comes along because you have to do these algorithms all while blindfolded. So you don't have any visual reference to the cube or any of the layers that you're moving around. You just have to know the letters by heart in your head, and you have to be able to execute them perfectly without messing up. If you mess up any little thing, you won't be able to see your mistake. You just have to know it from the muscle memory. So yeah, those are just some of the difficult algorithms you're going to need to know if you want to be able to solve a 4x4 blindfolded. I'm not even going to mention some of the complicated parity algorithms like the one you're seeing on screen right now. Anyway, that's it for the 4x4 blindfolded. Let's move on to the final cube. Now this last cube is well known for having one of the most difficult algorithms that most cubers ever learn, and certainly one of the longest. This is the square one. In this case in particular is the square one parity, which is normally the last step on the cube. So let me just go ahead and show you that algorithm. So we have slash -30 slash 03 slash 0 -3 slash 03 slash 20 slash 02 slash -20 slash 40 slash 0 -2 slash 02 slash -1 4 slash 0 -3 slash 03. Now, even if you don't understand that notation, you'll definitely notice that it was a very long algorithm. Now, fortunately, once you actually take the time to memorize it, it's not actually that bad of an algorithm as it may have initially seemed. Once you kind of get that muscle memory, it's actually not too hard to remember, and it can actually be kind of fun. But yeah, all of those moves were just to swap around these two pieces. It's kind of insane. Now most people learning square one just learn that one algorithm and stick with it for every single parity case on the cube, but that algorithm only swaps two adjacent edge pieces in particular. You can also get a whole bunch of other parity cases like having two opposite edge pieces swapped, or you could have them like in a circle. There's a whole bunch of different cases, each with their own algorithms that you can learn how to solve. This one is one particularly useful one, the two opposite swap. And this one you go 30 slash 33 slash -10 slash 2 -4 slash 4 -2 slash 0 -2 slash -4 2 slash 1 -5 slash 3 0 slash 3 3 slash. Anyway, the point is there's a bunch of different parity cases that you can do on the cube. All of them are really long and obnoxious, but the one that most people learn out of all of them is this one right here where you swap two adjacent edge pieces. So this one is by far the most hated one on the square one. Anyway, these are a bunch of cubes that each have really difficult algorithms in them to memorize. 3x3, 4x4, Megamorphix, 4x4 blindfolded, and of course square one. Anyway, I hope you guys all enjoyed this video. Be sure and leave a comment down below and let me know what your least favorite algorithm is, or the one that was most difficult for you to memorize. And anyway, I'll see you guys next time.